Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Flock. I am a partner and the Director of Information for Creative Leadership Solutions. I'm here today as your host and facilitator. If you have any technical issues, have any particular questions, please don't hesitate to send me a direct chat during the session. It is my pleasure today to introduce three of my colleagues who will be speaking with you about fearless coaching. First is my colleague Allison Apsey, who has been a district school and state leader for more than 20 years, leading at all levels from elementary to high school. She's had the honor to help open a highly successful charter school and develop the secondary program designed around research-driven practices. Allison served as an elementary principal and district leadership coach in Michigan and was on the executive board for the Michigan Elementary and Middle School Principals Association and serves on the NAESP Editorial Advisory Board. In alphabetical order, my next colleague, Dr. Bill Sternberg, has more than 25 years of experience in education, including roles as a special education director, for students with severe behavioral handicaps. Sorry, Bill, I got hung up there because my wife used to teach emotionally disturbed, and her mail used to come, Michelle Flock, seriously emotionally disturbed. So I was just wondering if that ever happened to you.
Can't say that it did, but that's all right.
His experience includes the oversight of Ohio's second largest federal grant next to Race to the Top, where he worked with 23 districts across the state to augment their professional practices with an emphasis in instruction, assessment, and evaluation. His focus has been on the analysis of team and systems approaches to instruction and assessment as a means of enhancing teaching and learning. And last but not least, Dr. Cedric Gray, a former principal and superintendent who has focused on culturally responsive school and passion-driven leaders. He most recently served as the Director of Education for Shelby County government, where he advised Mayor Lee Harris and county executives on policy and reform efforts related to education in Shelby County, Tennessee. As a principal and superintendent, he led successful school and district turnaround efforts and is frankly an inspiration to all of us here at CLS. So ladies and gentlemen, I know that you all are going to enjoy our time together. To get started, if you would, folks, please take full advantage of the chat feature throughout the day to send us a message, to ask questions, and just to make sure that we know who's in the room here today and that the chat feature is working. If you wouldn't mind, please entering your name into the chat, your district that you serve in or state, and your role in that district, and one thing that you'd hope we would cover today. We'll give you a minute to do that. Hillsborough, Florida. Thinking about you folks down there in Florida after all the storms. Hope everything came out okay for you. South Carolina. My neighbors to the south. I'm in North Carolina. Los Angeles. Several of us have been in and out of LAX recently, Jose. New York was there yesterday. Texas, excellent. Folks from all over, this is wonderful. All right, as those are coming in, ladies and gentlemen, I want to review our learning intentions today and actually turn that over to my colleagues. I will be on mute. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or challenges. Send those questions in through the chat and I will be happy to share those with your facilitators.
I just want to note too that Tom Crook from New York, superintendent, is interested in learning about questioning techniques. He mentioned that.
Great. Well, we'll be sure to circle around on that. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, I see, for those of you on the West Coast. As we start, we always want to start with our learning intentions. And for this session, there's really three. We first want to just really talk and analyze and reflect on our understanding of effective coaching practices. And then we really want to talk about how we can apply concepts of fearless coaching to those practices and to our own practices. Lastly, because we want to make sure that we're being interactive, we want to make sure that we're offering opportunities for you to collaborate and learn from each other, both through the chat box feature, as well as some breakout rooms that we'll have here in just a few moments. So to start us off, I always kind of want to look at the quasi-coaching roles. And so these are just a few, certainly not the exhaustive list. But we think of these in some terms as, oh, but these are coaches. But there is a particular difference, especially as we're talking about fearless coaching. So the first is the mentor, right? And if we think back on our first year teaching experience, many of us were assigned mentor teachers. And their real role is just to offer guidance, right? Not necessarily the support, but it's really about identifying those systems and processes and the compliance things that we have to get done in order for us to be effective and efficient. The next is the role of the consultant, and their real role is to answer questions. And I kind of think of the consultant role as someone that maybe come into a building and talk about a program or an initiative, or even, people from the State Department coming in and talking about policy. And their real role is, hey, we're going to talk about what it says and then answer any questions that you may have. The next two, supervisor and evaluator, I kind of lumped together. And their real role is just to give direction and kind of to tell you what's wrong. It's what's wrong from their perspective, and their direction from their perspective, not allowing maybe some input from others. It's really, here's where I think we need to go. So what differentiates the coach? Well, when we talk about fearless coaching, it's the coach is serving in a role where the coach is asking questions, not to reply or respond, but to understand. And it's that coach is nurturing that growth and independence in the person that they're coaching. So those are some differences there in terms of the different roles. So Tony, if you wanted to, there we go. So I just wanted to take a second to reflect on past experiences. So I want you to think back at a time when you were the client, so to speak. What role did your coach take on? Was it the consultant? Was it the mentor, the supervisor, evaluator, or were they truly a coach? What worked and what didn't? And so why don't you just put that into the chat box and I'll kind of monitor through here and call it out.
And Bill, would it be okay if folks also unmuted and offered a few reflections there?
Sure, we could do it that way too.
Poor typists like me.
Sure. So Thomas, you said your coach served as more the consultant, just answering the questions. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. They were here for, we're a PLC model school, and we had some solution tree consultant come in, and that's kind of what they were here for anyway. So I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but it was more of a consultant type of role at that particular time, and we now have someone coming in with more of that coach role and asking questions.
Okay. I see Tamara, coach and consultant. Looks like Shelley said, I had a mentor who was available to guide me and answer questions. We had a regular weekly meeting time to provide a space to talk and share. So Shelley, in that model where you had a mentor, did you feel like they were taking your perspective in too, or is it kind of going back to their own experiences?
And Shelley, if you'd like, feel free to unmute. You don't have to reply just via text there. I think I heard a microphone.
I did, yeah.
Perhaps not.
Well, I unmuted as we wait for Shelley potentially. In that, one of the things we talk about in our organization is that our job is constantly to try to get ourselves out of a job, try to work our way out of a job, because we're really fostering independence and growth. And my comment was, I had a coach who was, guess what I'm thinking, coach. Like, we played this game all the time where she would ask me questions, but she wasn't asking me questions to try to assess what I'm thinking. She was asking me questions to see if I could guess the right answer, which was what she was thinking. So it was more of an evaluator kind of role than a coaching role. It certainly didn't foster psychological safety or independence with my skills.
And Bill, it looks like Shelley was unmuted, but still not able to speak to us. Shelley and Leslie had sorry, not Shelley, Leslie and, well, actually Shelley, yes, had a mentor who was available in their first year, it sounds like, of teaching to regularly meet with them and answer questions. But an interesting note from Leslie, they didn't really share strategies or model best practices. So really just there kind of as a support, it sounds like, but not really somebody to help them extend their thinking.
Yeah, and I think that unfortunately it's been a lot of folks' experience, especially with a mentor, where they're just trying to share just kind of systems and processes, but not necessarily strategies or model best practices. Looks like Jose said if they were a coach, then mentoring did not work. The answer was inside of me. I needed help getting it out. Thank you for saying that.
Spot on.
This is Shelley. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
can. There
Oh,
you
thank
are.
you. Thank you. Okay, so what I was trying to say is in my first 2 years of teaching, we had a mentoring program, and it was not a conversation with my own information being like valued at that point. It was more so that the person was providing me kind of their experience and their guidance. So it was not feeling like a two-way street. It was more like she was there to kind of make sure I got through my first couple years with what she felt was valuable to offer to me.
Yeah, there's that, speaking for myself, Bill, Cedric, and Allison, I know sometimes I'm tempted to fall into that habit of kind of sharing war stories, things that got me through those difficult years, and may not necessarily, to Jose's point, help folks figure out solutions for themselves.
And interesting, Shelley, to that point, I get to ask this question often as I travel around the country and do this work. And what I hear from so many, when it is a valuable coaching experience, the coach sees them individually, knows their strengths, knows the areas they need to grow in, and communicates that really effectively. And mentors can do that too.
Absolutely. So we want to talk about what coaching means too. So the coach and the client agree on specific goals and then monitor progress towards those goals. And I think it's really important to also talk about the fact that a true coach is focused not only on the professional, but also the personal goals of the individual. And so some examples, even in my own travels, in working with leaders especially, is how are they balancing work and life? And how are we able to establish some goals around being able to separate that so that they're not burning the candle at both ends? So there is a coaching tool within our appendix in that Fearless Coaching book that can help start that conversation around how we establish those goals. And it's really important to also identify that this is a mutual goal setting. This isn't about the coach establishing the goals for the client. It's a mutual establishment. So on that, when we're talking about focusing on goals, we want to support the client in defining the goals. So again, it's that question asking and it's that information seeking to better understand, okay, why this goal or what are some other tenets around this goal. We want to make sure that we're documenting the goals and center our conversations always on those goals. Now, of course, we can have some time for some catch up on the personal or whatnot, but we really want to make sure that we are coaching around those goals and that those goals are, as my colleague Allison writes, SMARTY, that specific, the measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable. So we want to make sure that we are keeping an eye on all of that. Allison, did you want to add anything to that?
I actually was just typing. You read my mind.
I did.
Yeah, our meeting time can be so efficient because one of the things that we talk about is we never have time to meet. Our meeting time can be used so efficiently if we're focusing on progress monitoring these very specific, mutually agreed upon goals. So it can really help our meetings function much better.
And Tony wrote some of the best coaches he had took their ego out of the conversations. It was about me. 100% agree with you, Tony. I think, sometimes people like to look at me in my past experience, whether it was as an assistant superintendent or an elementary principal, and I want to put that all to the side. It's really about the client. It's not about me. I want to make sure that we are focused on the goals in the context of the client that we're serving. So thank you. Jose also writes, authentic goals need to come from the leader being coached. Absolutely. That's one of the things that we talk about in our organization is with every new client that we work with, going into this relationship without judgment and with true understanding and true information seeking to understand what those contexts are so that we can best support those that we coach. The next thing I want to talk about is focusing on feedback. And Doug Reeves really talks about this as fast feedback. And it really just breaks it down to fair, accurate, specific, and timely. And what I mean by that is, if it's fair, is it applicable to others in that same situation, in the same kind of context? Are we providing fair feedback? Are we providing accurate feedback based on what we're seeing or what we're perceiving? Is it specific enough so that it's actionable, so that the client really truly understands, okay, this is exactly what I need to do moving forward? And lastly, timely. It's so important that we provide timely feedback, because I don't know about you, I always hated when I turned something in for a grade or something like that, and I wouldn't see that feedback for another 3 weeks. So we want to make sure that whatever feedback that we're providing is done on a timely basis as well. Okay, so we've reached our first breakout room. So I want you to share with your colleagues in the breakout room one of your coaching experiences and discuss how establishing goals and providing fast feedback, or maybe even lack thereof, impacted your experience. And I think we have time for maybe 5 minutes to do this, or do you want to do 3? 5?
I think we're 5, yep.
Okay, let's do 5 minutes. So just share one of your coaching experiences and how the established goals and providing fast feedback impacted your experience.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to randomly assign you to a breakout room. Please make note of the prompt there, and I will send a message with about 1 minute left before we come back together. See you in a few. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you. Hopefully you had a great conversation in the breakout rooms. And I believe it's Allison.
Yes. Okay. So one of my favorite questions came up in the chat, actually, that I'd like to just address first. Amber, thank you for being vulnerable and asking the question, what if we aren't coaches yet? And I love that question, because the answer is, if you're an educator, you're a coach. If you're a teacher, you're a coach for your students. So you can take everything that we're talking about and just apply it with the context of you're the coach and your students are the client. If you're a parent, a spouse, like, there are so many coaching opportunities in our lives. And one of the things that I find, like, just warms my heart is, after sharing this fearless coaching with others, people come back to me and say, like, it transformed my marriage. Like, what? Like, learning about this is so powerful and can impact every relationship that we have. Because, okay, so I don't know if this fact I haven't fact checked it, but I think it's kind of accurate. There is a gentleman who's a coaching expert. His name is Michael Bungay-Stainer. And he said that 99% of our advice is bad. And, like, for those of us who are teachers and want to teach everybody all the things we know, like, that's a hard pill to swallow, that potentially 99% of our advice is bad. And it's not bad because it won't work for anybody. It's bad because it's not hitting the target in the moment with the person we're coaching, because we're not getting curious enough. We're not asking enough questions in order to help build that independence. So here are some elements of fearless coaching that are so powerful. And I was talking in my breakout session that I love Doug Reeves' work, because he takes things that can be so complicated and makes them so simple and applicable in any context. So these elements are identifying and building strengths. We recognize that any effective coaching relationship we have, we know the coach sees us, sees our strengths, and sees our next steps. Candor is something that is missing in a lot of collegial relationships in education, because we want to be nice to each other, and sometimes we sacrifice the truth in the sake of being nice. But there is candor in trusting relationships. And as soon as we stop being candid with each other and giving accurate feedback, it's not a coaching relationship anymore. It's a friendship. And in order to make the coaching effective and to see what progress we're making, they have to be based on mutually agreed upon goals. And I was actually working with a district where we were shifting the mindset of the new teacher mentoring program to be a fearless coaching program. It was incredibly powerful because, of course, there's no one we want to build competency and independence in as quickly as we want to with new teachers. And so one of the mentors said, well, what if my coachee, my client, wants to focus on a goal that I don't agree with? Well, at the beginning of the coach-client relationship, we established that they are going to be mutually agreed upon goals. So that's a conversation where we need to be candid and say, okay, that's a goal you're interested in. Let's talk about how we can maximize the impact of this coaching relationship and focus in on the most important goals. Because this other element is psychological safety. Your client knows that they're safe in your hands, that you're going to provide, you're going to know their strengths, you're going to have candid conversations, you're going to be focused on goals, and you're going to be always advocating for them, and in our case, in education, for the school community and for students. That they are safe in your hands. These are such important components of any coaching relationship. So I see that Tony, is there anything in the chat that you're seeing that we want to make sure we talk about?
Well, I think a question came up earlier. How do we build confidence? You talked about candor, and a piece of candor, I think, is being confident to have those honest conversations. But how do we build confidence so that our clients can ask questions?
Yes. So one of the things that as a coach, I talk to my clients about is the gift of me is honest feedback. Like you're not going to have many people in your lives who are going to risk providing really candid, honest feedback, but that is the gift of me as your coach. And establishing that right from the beginning is so important. And then we're going to talk a little bit in just a minute about what the client can expect from the coach, but then also establishing some expectations for what the coach can expect from the client. So we'll take a look at that and see if that helps answer some of the questions. So we want to make sure that we promote the health of the client, and both in terms of professional and personal goals. And that is part of that psychological safety, that our clients know we see them as whole people, not just workhorses or work machines. So emphasizing physical health, getting out in nature and taking walking meetings can help promote the health of the client. Emphasizing the importance of eating. Do you know that teachers on average get more bladder infections than in any other profession because we hold it too much? So we need to make sure that we are saying to our clients, like, do you need to use the restroom? Do you need, grab some water? What do you need in order to make sure that we're modeling, prioritizing our health, that we model that mental and physical resilience? And we stay true to our personal and professional values. And that means that we have to have defined them. So leaders as fearless coaches is a shift from offering guidance to listening, asking questions, and nurturing growth and independence. Ultimately, we want to work our way out of a job. So Tony, if we can forward to the next. So think about this. I would love to see the comments that you have. What should clients expect from coaches? In fearless coaching, we say they should expect confidentiality with clear exceptions. When I am coaching principals and I'm hired by the superintendent and the school board, they want some feedback. I work with the principals on crafting that feedback so that we give accurate and fully disclosed information to the superintendent about the coaching relationship, that we're very clear on what's confidential and what's not. The client should expect, like we talked about, candor. We talked about curiosity and just staying curious a little bit longer than we normally would, or a little bit longer than what's comfortable, so that we can search for what are the barriers to success for our clients. This confidence that we talked about, and this is mutual confidence. You have confidence in me as your coach and trust in me so that you're going to ask candid questions, and you have confidence that I will relentlessly advocate for you and the organization. And in our case, it's education. So it's students in our school community, and clarity. We're not causing any further fragmentation. We know we cannot solve all the problems of the world all at once. We cannot become experts in every content area immediately in our first year of teaching, but we can hone in on a few of the highest leverage strategies and goals. And then here's what the coach should expect from the client. And having this conversation at the beginning of the coach-client relationship is very valuable. And we do have a tool that in our appendices of the Fearless Coaching book, and we have a QR code that you can access them, that prompts this conversation. In order for this coaching relationship to be effective, the client has to be open to receiving support, has to be motivated, has to be receptive to this one-on-one help and guidance, and has to commit significant time and work to make the coaching successful. We can always come up with a reason we can't make a meeting, but we are what we prioritize. And we do have time for the most important things to us. So is this going to be one of those most important things?
Great point there, Emily. You know, in respecting that confidentiality, the conversations are confidential, Emily says, but the action steps can be shared. Here are the things that we're working on to achieve the goals. That's a really good distinction there.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so Cedric's going to guide us into the next set of breakout rooms.
Absolutely. And I've been chomping at the bit to just say two things before we jump into there. So first of all, I got some feedback once. There was a professional colleague of ours who wanted to begin this coaching relationship with another colleague. They had already had an established relationship as a mentor. Knowing they needed to shift gears, he asked, "What do I do?" I said, "Sometimes it's okay to hit the reset button. Have a sit down and a conversation about how our relationship's going to shift so that I can guide you to discovering the things you need to discover about yourself." Two other things, and I'm done. We're going to jump in. I'm just so excited about this. So great coaches are dot connectors. If you'd imagine your experience in your life as dots, great coaches help you connect one dot to another dot so that ultimately you have this awesome image when all of your dots are connected. And so I also noticed this, just one other point. Coaches, we know, if we see the symbolism around it, I'm a big college football fan. So on Saturday, I see all day, every Saturday, coaching, right? Coaches calling the play to the field, the quarterback gets it, and he runs the play. But what we don't often pay attention to is the real coaching takes place after the play. A quarterback throws an interception, he runs off from the field onto the sideline. The coach doesn't start, good coaches don't start fussing. What they do, the first thing they do is ask, "What did you see out there?" You know the difference between a good coach and a great coach when the quarterback goes back on the field and instead of throwing an interception, throws a touchdown. So when you are experiencing touchdowns, you know you're being coached well. All right, so let's get ready for breakout rooms.
Hang
Tony
on
is going
one second
Yeah.
there. I just want to make sure that I focus in on the break or the chat box. Teresa added a really, really good point. Additionally, it's good to ask what I can do to earn the right to coach you for those reluctant to being coached. Teresa, that is a very, very fantastic point.
Excellent. Very good point. Absolutely. Again, that's sort of part of that reset, right? The conversation you have that establishes rules, establishes boundaries, if you would, end zones and sidelines. Thank you so much for that comment. So as we go into breakout rooms, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that fearless coaches may encounter and how you may proactively overcome them.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, since we've had a quick introduction in the prior breakout rooms, I'm going to leave them the same. Again, about 5 minutes, and you'll receive a 1-minute warning when we're closing up. We'll see you all back here in just a little bit. All right, welcome back, folks. Thank you. I hope that was a beneficial conversation for you there in the breakout room, and Cedric is going to take us through the next stretch.
Absolutely. So we want to share a key takeaway or an action step. I'd love to get you to come off the microphone or drop it in the chat of the discussion we just made. And I'm not volunteering tearing anyone, but I'd love to hear from the group that I had a conversation with as well. Anyone?
No pressure.
You may use the chat or unmute to share.
Here's some keys going.
Sylvana, did I say that correctly?
Sylvana.
Savannah. Talk to us, Savannah.
Okay, so I'm actually a retired principal in Ontario, Canada. So a little bit similar because I did a lot of the solution tree and PLCs. Question was, what happens when you're either you have been part of the school and now you're taking the coaching role, or what happens when you have a large group? How do you move them? The approach that I took that was the most successful was in the school, not necessarily doing something with everybody, because those naysayers or the people who don't want to learn just seem to sabotage. So I would start with a small group of people and say, okay, this practice or this question, what is it? Let's work on it together. So you're not telling the others they have to do it. You're just working with those who want to. And then we know that works well. And then that enthusiasm is almost like a little explosion, and then other people want in. And then as they then choose to be part of the learning, then they're coming in.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing it in that way. It is about, beginning in small groups and helping them recognize, realize, why you are there, right? To help the light bulbs come on. Thank you so much for sharing. Are there any others?
Cedric, in the chat, Anna shared no fixing, advising, or saving. She's tried. It doesn't work. Practice asking honest questions to guide clients to recognize and act in their sphere of control.
I love it. Yes. There's nothing like a coaching session where the client says, "Oh, that was a great question." When you hear that, you know you have hit the nail on the head. Any other?
Cedric, I would suggest from coaching teacher teams or PLCs that my experience has been we don't start with the neediest teams because then it looks like it's a punishment. And that everyone from the highly effective team to the low effective team wants feedback. Everybody wants the feedback, and we can learn from coaching those high performing teams because they're implementing strategies that other teams can learn and improve upon. So be cognizant of those of you on this that are coaching teacher teams and making sure that everyone receives timely feedback.
Well, it's not just the teacher teams. Thomas actually shared a comment in a similar vein. Lisa, Thomas, would you mind unmuting and elaborating?
Sure. I just asked Cedric if he's come across an individual or a group of individuals who had to, based on maybe a performance or something like that in their district, where they were assigned a coach and they were coming into the coaching environment in the wrong headspace. Like Lisa just alluded to, kind of like a punishment. So we had a conversation around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Thomas and the team reflected very strongly, it is about sometimes that reset and, a reestablishment of relationship, understanding that what our focus is on collaboratively building goals. It is the coach is there for the client. And once that's established and maybe even emphasized, it helps to reset the relationship. Thank you so much for your feedback. So what lends to this is a question I think he was asked earlier in the webinar, was what are the questions to ask when you're leaning into this? Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. We have a set of coaching tools. This document is 14 pages long, and in it includes multiple resources. There are checklists for coaches. There are checklists for clients. There's how to conduct your first meeting, what to do prior to the first meeting, how to help manage time management, how to set goals, classroom observation checklist, and readiness checklist. All the things you need to get started on the path to successful coaching. It is a remarkable resource. Please take advantage of it. Scan the QR code, check the back of the text. we are happy to provide those for you. And in addition to that, we have Fearless Coaching book study available. It is delivered through our Skills Force application. It is book study. It's virtual and asynchronous, which means it can be conducted on your own time when you are ready, as well as individual or as a staff. It is hot off the press. You check the link, the link in the chat, and you will be linked up to a very powerful resource. Look, there's nothing that grows a group together closer than when you're walking through a book study, because you speak the same language and you share the same goals. And so with that being a valuable resource, we're excited about offering that to you and hope that you can take advantage of it. And you can always reach out to any of us at Creative Leadership Solutions for that work. Thank you so
Cedric.
much, Tony.
Cedric, before Tony, I just wanted to just go back to Thomas's great question about individuals who come into the coaching situation reluctantly. I have not met a single person who doesn't love to be told how awesome they are. Not one. And as soon as people know that you see the skills that they have and the value that they bring to the organization, all of a sudden they open up to you. So our coaching is sometimes brought on because people are identified as needing significant improvement. But if we can recognize the skills that that individual comes to the coaching with already and make sure that they know it, and then you have skills in all of these areas. Where are you looking to get better? You are a rock star. You want to continuously grow and learn. I'm here to help you with that. Where do you want to get better? Those conversations can help even the most reluctant clients get on board with the coaching situation.
And Thomas, to that point, I know a few years ago we had a client that was a district client that assigned coaches, and I happened to be one of those coaches. And my very first principal coaching meeting, the principal said, "Okay, just what am I doing wrong? Because obviously I need a coach for some reason." And so it became more about the conversation and about saying it's not about doing wrong. It's about let's talk about goals. Let's talk about what you want to accomplish and how I can support you in that. And we talked about that in the breakout room and earlier where I was involved, in that we have to sometimes just start that conversation so that people understand this is not about being evaluated. This is more about being coached. So let's start with what you're doing right, as Allison just said. But it's also about, what can we create as goals for you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we know our time together is way too short. We appreciate the contributions and the conversations today. Want to grab a comment from Emily there in the chat. She makes a really good point. Those at the top of their game or profession all have something in common, a coach. And perhaps Jose will forgive me for referencing Freddie, or actually be excited about referencing Freddie Freeman, the LA Dodgers, 4 home runs in 4 World Series games. Guarantee you he's got a batting coach working with him every day. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be aware, we hope this is the beginning of the conversation and not the end. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We provide a variety of services, from remote and on-site coaching that we've talked about today to coaching teacher teams and PLCs. We can work with you to think about prioritizing your curriculum and your standards. So please stay in touch. We also are developing new tools and resources that Cedric referenced with the book study that is available for Fearless Coaching through our platform Skills Force that we've partnered with, so that you can do this in a synchronous and asynchronous manner, individually or with an entire staff or district. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. A recording of this webinar will be distributed in approximately 24 hours. Again, reach out to any of us here today at Creative Leadership or the number on the screen there with any questions. We'd love to hear your success stories, your challenges, and continue the conversation that we started today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.